Hello there, let's get on with part 5. Make a new widget blueprint for our character creator. Add a canvas panel and name it Color Picker. In this panel we then add 2 new images. Call them Palette and Picker. Set the scale of the Color Picker panel to 128 by 128. Select the palette image and in the anchors drop-down, Ctrl left click the big box to fit the image to the size of the panel. Let's make the picker 8 by 8. Change the alignment to 0.5 on X and Y. This will change the pivot to be in the middle of the image. I'm gonna make the palette a gray color so I can see what's going on. Now set the picker's translation to 64 on X and Y to center the picker. Let's anchor the Color Picker panel to the top left corner so that it will adjust its position correctly on different screen resolutions. I'm also going to offset the position from the edge of the screen a little bit. Now let's create the skin color palette. Create a new image that is 128 by 128. The way I make it is by layering 2 gradients. First a horizontal gradient that goes from yellow to red, then a vertical black and white gradient that is set to multiply on top of the first gradient. I then play with the opacity of each layer to find something I like. In the color gradient, I also desaturate vertically so that the brighter the skin, the less saturation it has. Once exported, open it in Unreal and set the tiling method to clamp in both axes. This prevents colors being sampled from the opposite side of the image when the user picks a color around the borders of the palette. Select the palette image. Under Appearance, open Brush and select the palette texture we just imported. Also, remember to set the color back to white. Open your character creator blueprint and let's spawn the widget on Begin Play. Save the widget as a variable so we can access it later. Next, open our widget graph and add a new variable called Character Creator. Back in the character blueprint, we then set this new variable to reference our character creator. Add a new function and call it Skin Tint Update. Add delta seconds as a float input. Add a new vector tool called Skin Tint Coordinates and set its default X and Y values to 64. And add a new float called Set Skin Tint Speed. Let's multiply that tint speed by delta seconds. And multiply this value by mouse X. Now get the skin coordinates and split the output. Add a set skin tint coordinates node and split the input. Add the existing skin coordinates X to our multiplied X value and assign this new value back into skin coordinate X. We've just taken the coordinates from the previous frame and added to these coordinates according to how much the mouse has moved. Now let's do the same for mouse Y. Add a sequence in the beginning and attach everything we just made to the first output. For the second output, get the character creator widget's picker, split the in transform input and assign the skin tint coordinates to in transform translation. This will update the small picker square image to reflect the coordinates we just calculated. Let's make sure to clamp the coordinates before we set it. Add a new boolean called isSettingSkinTint. In the tick event, let's check this boolean and execute skin tint update if it is true. And let's not forget to set this variable to false in stop interact so that nothing is active when the player lets go of the mouse button. Let's add one more thing in the stop interact function. Get the player controller and drag out a new function called setInputMode Game and UI. This will make sense later on. In the widget blueprint, add an override function called onMouseButtonDown. This function is triggered every time the player clicks inside the widget. Add a sequence node and for the first input, check the isHovered boolean. If true, we want to set the isSettingSkinTint boolean to true. Then we get the player and set input mode game only. Set the skin tint update speed to something like 800 and hit play. When the mouse button is pressed and the mouse is hovering over our palette interface, we are enabling our skin tint update. But we're also setting the input to game only. We're doing this because otherwise the variable mouse X and Y won't update properly in our character creator. And we make sure our input mode is back to game and UI when the player lets go of the mouse button in our stop interact function. Now let's actually change the skin color. Open the head material, add a texture sample node and select the palette texture. Add a new vector parameter and call it skin tint coordinates. Add a make float 2 node and connect red and green to X and Y. Then connect the result to the texture UVs. Add a multiply node and reconnect this lerp node's connection and multiply the lerp by our texture. Back in our skin tint update, get the character face mesh and set the vector parameter we just made. Divide the clamped values by our texture resolution and connect those values to our parameter values. To get a better base texture to colorize, let's export the face base color texture and tweak it to be closer to white. Let's give that a try. If you noticed, when we first hit play, the skin color was white even though the picker is in the center. Let's fix that. Let's convert these nodes to a new function. Call it setMaterialSkinTint. Remove those inputs. Open the function, drag in the skin tint coordinates, split the output and connect it to X and Y before they get divided. Add a new pin in begin play and execute our new setMaterialSkinTint function. Now when you hit play, the skin color will match the picker coordinates. For the body material, this is where you add these same material nodes. In the setMaterialSkinTint function, you then get the body mesh and set the same parameter with the same values. And that's it. See you in part 6.